Tuesday edition of the Ron Potesta Show. So yesterday, President Biden nominated Bridget Brink, the current U.S. ambassador to Slovakia, to be the new U.S. ambassador to the Ukraine. Joining me on the hotline to talk about this, Fox News radio correspondent Albert Eisenberg. Albert, this sounds more like a punishment. What did Bridget Brink do to deserve this one?
Well, you know, our ambassadorships are chock full of, former campaign donors, high-level people on both sides of the aisle, and sometimes you actually get people who rush to the fire and want to make a difference, and Bridget Brink seems like a solid choice with bipartisan credentials. She's a State Department alum. She's served in Eurasia and Europe, and actually it's possible she might actually be looking to be competent and solidify the situation, which is rare out of the Biden White House.
Well, she has decades of experience, and it makes her uniquely suited for the Ukraine moments. And obviously, you have to have someone of experience to be an ambassador in a country which might be the hotbed. Actually, there's no might about it. It is the hotbed of problems in the world right now, and obviously President Biden has all the faith in the world in Bridget Brink.
Yeah, and I mean, I thought it was interesting to hear that he tapped somebody who is a Trump appointee to be the ambassador to Slovakia, because I think that shows theoretically a level of responsibility that, you know, there are a lot of high-level and important posts that Biden has not staffed the best people toward, starting with his vice presidential choice. And, you know, you could think of Xavier Becerra, who has just been completely out to lunch, a number of other Biden appointees. So it's a good news, I would think, from the American response. What we should also be looking for as far as the American response to what's going on in Ukraine is considering more domestic energy production, which is probably the chip that Biden is most reluctant to play, and which Republicans should press the hardest on, is the, you know, pipelines that have been canceled, and the way that it truly doesn't matter. You can do all the diplomacy you want in that region, but if you're reliant, especially in Europe, on Russia's natural gas and oil, you're never going to win this conflict.
Albert Eisenberg joining me on the hotline. Albert, you hit on something that it tends to be a hot button in politics, at least in the United States, and that's the fact that Bridget Brink is a Donald Trump appointee when she was named ambassador to Slovakia. And here's Joe Biden, the current president, tapping Brink to be the new ambassador to Ukraine. Now, she obviously has plenty of experience, and she is the very good candidate to take over for the ambassador. But I'm going to be curious to see how many Democrats are going to have a problem with this because Bridget Brink is a, quote, Trump holdover.
Yes, and as they say, victory has 1,000 fathers and defeat is an orphan. And you could see the Biden White House and the Democratic Party cracking more and more due to really, really bad, historically bad opinion polls, and, you know, the expectation that they're gonna fold and be washed away in November, which I think is probably true. So the more bad news they get, the more restive they get, and there will be a vocal left-wing flank. Maybe Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders will be among those louder senators voicing their opposition to anything tainted by Trump. But I think overall, if Biden gives his seal of approval, this probably is going to be something they're less likely to play politics with.
Brink is from Michigan. She started working in the State Department during the Bill Clinton administration in 1996. She can speak Russian. She can speak Serbian. She's very well suited for this job. But, you know, like I said at the top of the interview, it sounds more like a punishment. But if anyone is going to be able to calm the temperature down maybe a little bit, it could very well be Bridget Brink.
Yes, it seems like the responsible choice, and I think if you look at the Biden administration's response to Ukraine relative to the other issues that they've handled or bungled, you know, inflation, the border, Afghanistan. This has actually been a relative success for the Biden administration so far, barring my point earlier about domestic oil and gas production. So I would say this is par for the course. And, to be charitable to the Biden administration, this has not been an abject failure. We have not marched to war, nor have we completely yielded to Putin. We've maintained that middle lane that America needs to, and been relatively stable, relatively stable for the Biden administration. So I would say that this is a strong choice from what I understand, what's been reported, and we can hope that America's response will continue to be strong, but not overly strong. There are some lingering questions, obviously. Nobody knows what's going to happen in Russia and Ukraine. Nobody knows what Germany is going to do. It's been beholden to Russia and is paying them millions of euros a day in natural gas and oil. The one thing we can do in America is send our best people over and approve pipelines domestically.
Albert, you mentioned Germany. Before we let you go, how much pressure is Washington putting on Germany to stop spending their money on purchasing Russian fuel?
Well, they're putting some pressure on, but the Biden administration's talking out of both sides of its mouth, because the reason Germany is purchasing so much Russian oil and gas is because Germany has invested so heavily in quote-unquote alternative energy, which is unreliable and hasn't filled the gap, while decommissioning their nuclear power. And the Biden administration is hostile towards the pipelines. There was one suggested that went from Israel to Cyprus that would have supplied Western Europe with natural gas from newly explored shale reserves in the Mediterranean that the Biden administration pressured the international community to cancel. So they're really talking out of both sides of their mouths. And unfortunately in Germany, since the Berlin Wall fell, there have been factions in Germany that are more warm to Russia than they are to looking westwards. And some of those people are sitting in the main coalition partner, the Social Democrats, and have been for a long time. So we're facing some issues, and Germany really needs to be embarrassed internationally and domestically to make sure that they can shift gears and help the rest of the coalition put more pressure on Russia and stop taking in Russian oil and gas to fuel their economy.
Fox News radio correspondent Albert Eisenberg joining me on the program. Albert, thank you so much for the insight.
Thank you, sir.
You got it. Albert Eisenberg from Fox News Radio. Great choice, and I'm sure there will be some folks in the Democrat Party, the hard left, that will look back and say, well, wait a second, wasn't Bridget Brink appointed by Donald Trump? What are we doing here? And it just goes to the hypocrisy that I just find so irritating, and both sides of the aisle do it. But on this case, it's the left that's doing this. Just because Bridget Brink was nominated by another president doesn't mean that Bridget Brink can't do the job. She's more than qualified. And like I said, it sounds more like a punishment, but if anyone can cool the temperature in Ukraine, it would be a person as experienced as Bridget Brink. And frankly, I could not care less, if she was nominated by President Trump or any other Republican president.